you geeks! The Rings of Power Season 1 has ended and everyone has an opinion. The question for me is how to make my review stand out from the crowd. Spoilers! I could talk about how it ended stronger than the Wheel of Time, and it's not so bad.
And nothing in the world is so bad as something which is not so bad.
Or I could talk about how it had pacing and structural issues, which could have been solved, I'd wager, by having Mount Doom erupt near the mid-season, cut down the time with the Harfoots, and spend more than one episode introducing and forging the Elven Rings.
We must make 3.
3? Why 3?
Though it was nice to see Galadriel give up her dagger.
True creation requires sacrifice.
I'll be darned. Character development. No, everyone has said that already. So I return to something I said before. It may be fan fiction, but it looks like good fan fiction. I've never really quantified what I think makes a fanfic worthy of being added to the Tolkien verse. Thus, the only way to determine for me if The Rings of Power is worthy is to compare it to The Lord of the Beans, the only other Tolkien fanfic I've given such an honor to. They are surprisingly similar. Both stemmed from a time of corporate desperation. Both attempted to carry out Tolkien's message in their MacGuffins. Both expanded on Tolkien's world, and both had plots centered on twist villains. The question is not who did it better, but if The Rings of Power has done enough to be worthy of Tolkien. Corporate mandate. Tolkien is one of those rare writers who was actually able to merely write for the joy of it. As a professor of Oxford, he wasn't doing it for a paycheck.
It ain't about the money. It's not about the money, money, money.
Yet, I'm not so impractical as to presume that those who write for their dinner are any less artists than the gentry who can afford to do it as a hobby. The Lord of the Beans came about in what I call Big Idea Productions' Silver Age. The golden age of when Phil Vischer could write just whatever he wanted ended when he tried to launch their studio onto the big screen with Jonah. That sank. However, so Big Idea rose again under a new corporate structure, focused more on doing remixes of popular movies rather than telling Old Testament tales with vegetables. Of these came The Lord of the Beans. It lacked the countertop opening and did not end with QWERTY and a Bible verse.
And there's not even a verse! No, this is all wrong!
Yet, despite it being a corporate-mandated cash grab, The Lord of the Beans was still created by people who cared about its story, both as an adaptation and as their own original work. The Lord of the Beans actually included a Tom Bombadil correlation.
Boy! I've got a new umbrella!
Meanwhile, we all know that Jeff Bezos sunk a stupid ton of money into the Rings of Power, hoping it would carry the new Amazon studios to great heights. Many people have been critical of this, thinking Lord Bezos was trying to buy the fandom. I don't really care how much money was thrown into a project, provided that some heart was thrown in as well. Some spark of love and creativity. And the Rings of Power gave us the Harfoots.
Now, if you don't mind, I'd just like to sit a while. Watch the sun come up.
Say what you will about how boring or poorly paced the Harfoot storyline is, but a show that is trying to pass for cheap thrills is not going to include hours of a prehistoric pseudo-British society, including how they wear silly hats for solemn occasions.
Chan's proud fellow. Yarrow proud fellow.
The Harfoots were supposed to be the Tolkien heart of this story, though unfortunately the show's writers were not able to even keep pace with Tolkien. Tolkien, with his page-long description of Bilbo's door, was able to keep the plot moving in Hobbiton. He knew that audiences still love cheap thrills.
Don't need dollar bills to have fun tonight. I love cheap thrills.
Although The Rings of Power did not succeed fully with the Harfoots, there are other factors by which we may consider if The Rings of Power was able to balance both Tolkien's message and Tolkien's flair. The Message MacGuffin! Some viewers may think I'll give Lord of the Beans a free pass because it's Christian. It's Christian! Oh, ye of little history. Tolkien was not merely Christian, he was Catholic. He acknowledged the gravitas of fairy tales and the allure of evil in ways that shill like Pureflix cannot even comprehend. Although I once attended Mass with Phil Vischer's brother, the Vischer family is rather non-denom. In short, Phil Vischer, like me, is no Tolkien, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it must be considered when someone is trying to write a work worthy of Tolkien. Vischer starts strong, using a classic fairy tale MacGuffin, a bean.
The beans. Beans. The special beans.
Yet here is where I can finally list my pedantic criticism of Lord of the Beans as an adaptation. The bean is ultimately a MacGuffin for good.
It's an amazing gift, Toto, and it's yours. The bean is yours.
Sure, the bean can be misused,
You want a fountain of great knee-high to shoot right out of the ground? No problem. A life of ease, right in the palm of my hand.
but it's hardly the physical manifestation of original sin dooming its bearer to fear death and desperately cling to life while bringing about their own demise swifter than natural.
Betrayed is he, Lord, to his death.
Some may say it's impossible to do that in a kid's show. I'd say the Dragon Prince did it. Meanwhile, The Rings of Power Seasons 1 MacGuffins are Mithril and the Dagger. Galadriel's dagger's backstory is the opening of the show. It, like the bean, is a symbol of ultimate goodness, sort of. It comes with some advice that does not seem worthy of a Tolkien hero.
Sometimes we cannot know until we have touched the darkness.
Thus, also like the bean, we see Galadriel use the good object to do bad things.
Perhaps I shall begin by killing you. You slavering.
Galadriel.
Although the dagger is always present,
Whose dagger was it, Galadriel?
it does get overshadowed by the swords, both Galadriel's
Put up your sword.
Without it, what am I to be?
and Theo's. It's supposed to be profound that Galadriel gives her sword to Theo, but I'm still not sure what Galadriel's sword meant to her besides being an extension of the dagger. And I'm not sure how Theo taking up Galadriel's sword is better for him than the dark sword.
When it was in my hands, I felt powerful.
I suppose Galadriel's doesn't require the wielder to make a blood sacrifice. Improvement? Now Theo can kill orcs with impunity. Is that the message these swords are meant to convey? I don't know, which is why I don't technically count the swords as message MacGuffins, yet entire plots hinge on their existence. The other MacGuffin is Mithril, which the show decided to make a mystery for the first half,
There can be no trust between hammer and rock.
then gave it a new apocryphal origin story. That doesn't seem to be worthy of Tolkien either.
A power as pure and light, as good, as strong and unyielding as evil.
Sure, we know that single-minded pursuit of mithril will bring about evil in the form of a Balrog. But to say that there is the strength of evil in mithril is, in the world of Tolkien, utter nonsense.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Thus we have in the finale the mixing of the two MacGuffins to make the ultimate Tolkien MacGuffin, the Elven Rings, which are supposed to be free from Sauron's evil influence. Sauron doesn't help forge the rings in the show.
How is we forged today? Must be for the elves alone, untouched by other hands.
But the origin story of Mithril raises the question if the rings are truly untouched by evil. Despite that, the Rings of Power MacGuffins are not too different from the one bean of the Lord of the Beans. These are tools of good that the heroes were given, though they could misuse them and do evil. Thus, I think that the Rings of Power strikes close enough to Tolkien's message for a fanfic. Tolkien's world. The Lord of the Beans and the Rings of Power both expand on Tolkien's world in surprisingly similar ways. First, they build up sympathy for the residents of Mordor under legally distinct names, of course. There's the Land of Woe.
I don't think these people are evil. I think they're thirsty.
And the Southlands.
I've come to know the voices and the hands of those behind them.
Half of us just left.
But half stayed.
Then the stories build up sympathy for orcs.
We were cast off by shackles.
Or rather, sporks.
We ain't had nothing but maggoty bread for 3 stinking days. I love a cookie.
By giving them an elven father figure.
I sacrificed enough of my children for his aspirations.
Orcs, save me!
Cookie Man say no.
I hope you remember that Jerry played Adar before it was cool.
I heard stories of elves taken by Morgoth.
The next time he teaches your kids about sharing.
Oh, that's my brother. He didn't have anything to do this weekend. He's another elf.
Lastly, as I mentioned in my episode 6 review, both The Lord of the Beans and The Rings of Power feature the release of water, drastically changing the landscape of not Mordor. Though one brings life and the other death, I'll actually give the Rings of Power bonus points for tripling down on the too much of a good thing can lead to bad outcomes. The Lord of the Beans doesn't really consider the consequences of making a town's ecosystem dependent on a magic wish-granting bean at the bottom of the well in the center of town. What could possibly go wrong?
They're downed and drowned and never found.
So I think the Rings of Power wins this round, though the Lord of the Beans does explain why they didn't fly the eagles to Mordor.
Oh, there's a bird! Let's jump on him! Maybe he'll fly us wherever we want to go.
Twist villain. Lastly, both fanfics rely heavily on a plot element Tolkien only used sparingly, a twist villain.
When did Saruman the Wise abandon reason for madness?
Though it may be a matter of perspective. For the audience, it was no surprise that a man named Wormtongue was a villain.
Saruman the White has ever been our friend and ally.
Yet the Rohirrim were shocked.
How long is it since Saruman born you?
Just as the Fellowship of the Bean was shocked that the elders of the Raspberry Forest betrayed them.
He should take the bean through the Blue Gate to the Land of Woe.
You know, the ones who detained them on a rooftop.
How long will they keep us here?
The last fellow I knew who made fun of their language was up here for 12 years.
Then they let him go?
No, he was blown off in a windstorm. Never seen again.
And then chased them out of the forest, throwing berries all the way. Yet the Fellowship of the Bean thought it was still a good idea to follow the elders' advice, and were astounded that the trees were evil all along.
Scary man!
The elders sent you here because I told them to.
What?
One may argue that trees in Tolkien were always good. Coming fresh off the Rings of Power, that is a safe bet. But do not forget Old Man Willow, who attacked the hobbits in the Old Forest, or what the trees would have done to Merry and Pippin in Fangorn.
I told Gandalf I would keep you safe, and safe is where I'll keep you.
Despite their flaws, the elves still do love the trees, since all things, including Sauron, were created good.
I have been awake since before the breaking of the first silence.
The Sauron and Gandalf reveal was only slightly better hidden than the Elder's betrayal in Lord of the Beans. I have one friend who admitted that he thought the Harfoot Stranger was Sauron, so his viewing experience was quite different from mine.
Haru Sauron.
I called Halbrand's bluff based off his first line.
Tides of fate are flowing.
Well, if no one else will.
Yours may be heading in. Or out.
So the show's waiting to the final episode to reveal it seemed needlessly tedious for me.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it!
Though watching the fandom theorize over who was Sauron was fun. That's the sort of debate fandoms are supposed to have, all in good fun, of course. Though the scenes revealing Sauron...
You bind me to the light, and I bind you to power.
And Gandalf...
When in doubt, Eleanor Brandyfoot. Always follow your nose.
were perfectly appropriate for their characters. I can't help but wanting something more from the show. In The Lord of the Beans, Bilboy returned to defeat the Dark Lord Scary Man because he had given up his possessions and learned the truth at the heart of his tale.
When you gave me the bean, you lost everything.
Yes, I did. But I found so much more.
I don't expect the Rings of Power to come out with a clear moral of the story, but I wanted a deeper plot point that wound all the story's threads together to signal a deeper truth.
The key to be a truly happy man.
I had theorized that Sauron had poisoned the trees, but that is not true.
You convinced her. I wanted to remain in Numenor.
I don't mind being wrong, but I want to know why I was wrong. The answer that all things fade just doesn't satisfy.
We hoped that by sending her away and so bringing an end to the last vestiges of war, we might arrest the decay.
While The Rings of Power has more seasons to answer this question, I wish they had given a hint at a deeper truth of the show. Coming to the end of season 1, I still wonder, why did they feel the need to tell the story in the way they did? While most of the show is nice, only a few parts feel necessary. That is why fans can restructure the pacing to suit their whims. We think we know where the story is going, but we don't know why they are taking this route. And by the end of season 1, we should at least have a clue.
Let's just say we're doing it for a pal in the army, huh? Well, it's not good, but it's a reason.
That is why the show doesn't quite feel worthy of Tolkien yet, for me. Season 2 could redeem it. I just wish we didn't have to wait that long. If 40 minutes of talking vegetables can live up to Tolkien, then so too can Amazon. I hope. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you would like to see more. Your patronage is greatly appreciated.